Oh yeah, on my college there'll be a few other things, extra credit, particularly on the first chapter. Now this is world history. And unlike what they called world history when I was in school, which was nothing more than Western civilization, this is actually world history. In other words, we will, before it's over, we'll be visiting India, China, Africa, North and South America, Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea, Vietnam. But I will spend more time on the West because after all, you're in a Western country and I'm obviously, I hope you're obviously a Westerner. Particularly, I'll spend a lot more time on chapter 1 than I do the other chapters. To me, chapter 1 is extremely important, especially since, folks, if you're keeping up with the news at all, so much of what is going on in the news right now is happening right here, where civilization appears to have begun. So a lot's happening in the Middle East. I will spend more time on chapters covering Greece and Rome than I do on India and China, and more time with Western Europe during the Middle Ages than I do with India and China during the Middle Ages. And again, because this is a Western country, and of course I studied more of Western civilization. I did the civilizations of India and China, so I know more about them. All right. With that kind of an overview then, again, next time I'll go over the syllabus, not necessarily line by line. I mean, hey, you can read it yourself, but there are some things I want to point out. And one thing I want to emphasize, folks, if you decide you need to drop the course, do me and yourself a favor and either go to your computer or go to the registrar and officially drop it. If you don't, if you just simply quit coming to class without dropping, and in the semester, all I can do is give you an F. And that will stay on your transcript perhaps the rest of your life, unless you know of a way to take the course later and erase the F. But do yourself a favor, do me a favor, drop the course if you decide you want to. Before the drop deadline, there will be 3 tests. And that way you'll have some idea whether you can keep up with the rest of your classmates or not. Your grading is based on how well you compare with the rest of your classmates, or another way of saying that is I always have graded on a curve. And 2/3 of my pupils wind up making A's and B's, but that means about 1/3 of you wind up not. So don't go out of here thinking I'm guaranteeing you're an A or B. And I wound up giving a few C's and D's and F. Most of the F's I give from people who either did not turn in a paper or persons who just simply quit without dropping. And lately, in recent years, that's not been as bad as it once was. But we went through a period of time here at one time where 30 students would start a class, and in many cases, only 10 would wind up finishing. I don't know what happened. But hopefully that won't be happening now, where that doesn't seem to have happened as much in recent years as it once did. But we went through a period of time where it seemed like we had a whole lot of quitters, a whole lot of slackers. Hopefully I'm not talking about any one of you. All right. I'll have more to say again about the requirements for the course next time. Again, make sure you download the syllabus in iCollege. There was a time when this school required that we print up the syllabus and pass it out to all of you. But those days ended when this school ran into a financial hurdle and they decided, hey, we can save ourselves thousands of dollars every year by not printing up that much paper. So you will be responsible for the syllabus on your own. Another thing, by doing it this way, you can't say, I lost my syllabus. If you lose the printed copy you printed up, hey, just go back to iCollege, it's there. Or download it and put it on your computer, and as long as you have your computer, it's there. Even if you lose your computer, the syllabus is still there, folks. So you won't lose it, not unless I lose it. All right, we'll get started. The textbook, World History. Now, I see very few of you have it. I understand that because, I mean, I have one daughter that graduated from college, another one's still in, and every semester you wonder, does the teacher require a textbook? My answer to that is yes, you need your textbook. History is primarily reading. The text is Dwight Spielberg, Volume 1. Now please don't get Volume 2. It's not, it won't help you in this class. Volume 1. Now, as far as the edition, this is the 7th edition. I don't care if you get the 6th, the 5th, the 4th, the 3rd, the 2nd, or the 1st. It's as long, folks, as it's Dwight Spielberg. I've been teaching here since 2000. At that time, the school started using these two authors. A lot of colleges use them. So, Dwight, and they also put out a book that's 2/3 this size called The Essential World History. If you want to use that one, fine. But don't try to use any other authors because each author has its own thing. And my tests are based largely on the text of Dwight Spielberg. So you get this one. Now, having said that, I will say this is college. I am not going around the room with a checklist and say, show me your textbook and dock points off people who don't have one. You can get it or you cannot. It's up to you. Officially, I've told you it's required. Hopefully now we understand each other. If you think you can pass the course without it, more power to you. I had a girl in this morning's class said, hey, I rented this very, very cheap. Very, very good. More power to you. And if you can find a way of getting it online, I've been told that it's online. I don't know about that. Don't try to borrow it from the library, and I'll tell you why. They're not available. There are too many of you trying to borrow from the library. Maybe one or two might get lucky and get it, but by now they're gone. Used, I don't care if it's used or not, and two ought to get together and share it. Now, don't do like I had a pupil do to me, about 5 years ago, and ask me, can you please Xerox your copy for me? Anybody have any idea what kind of answer I had to give to that? Yeah, I try to accommodate with pupils, but there's only one answer I can give to something like that. Anybody know what it is? I can't do it. Here's why. It's not that I don't want to help you. It's illegal, folk. This is copyrighted material. If I get caught copying and distributing to you pupils, I'd be in more trouble than I could get out of, folk. So, anyway, he came back a few days later. Oh, I had a friend of mine copy it for me. I said, I didn't hear that. I don't need to know that. I kept my trap shut. Ideally, I'm supposed to record it when I hear about it. In this case, I didn't. All right. All right. Chapter 1, page 1. Actually, not page 1. Yeah, page 2. Early humans, first civilization. For many generations, we would debate whether or not Egypt was the first civilization or whether it was Babylon. We went back and forth between Egypt on the one hand and Babylon on the other. Now, obviously, I mean, I know this map is not the correct map for this, but it's the only map I have, so it's the one I'll use. We went back up and forth between Egypt and Babylon. But then we discovered the Sumerians, and we became convinced that the Sumerians are older than the Egyptians. And even more recently, we discovered a civilization over here in the Indus Valley, along the Indus River in Pakistan. The Indus River is not on this map, it's right along in here. And we don't know whether the Indus Valley civilization or the Sumerian civilization or a civilization down here in Nubia. We don't know which one of them might have come first. It's a toss-up. They appear to all of them appeared fairly quickly. All right. I use the word civilization when I was a kid. My teacher asked me what a civilization was. My picture of civilization was, well, when they invent writing. That's part of it. But the word civilization has its root word civil, which means it's a society, a group of people, several people who get together, and they have several things. Of course, among them they have writing, but they have differentiation of duties. One of them, most of them in the time past, were farmers. But someone might decide to quit his farm and become a blacksmith, someone else a tanner, and someone else a scholar, a scribe. And somebody else to become a government official. You know, they have differentiations of duties and differentiations of authorities. You have at the top, you have a king. Basically, a civilization is something more than a tribe, more than a bunch of tribal people that meet with a chief of the tribe. But they're a large body of people where they have differentiation of duties. And they have courts. They have ways to supposedly try to settle their differences without fighting each other, without killing each other. They have a system of law codes, system of justice. And they have a king. The king has under him subordinates. And they have armies to try to protect them from invaders. And this is a constant. Folk warfare has been a constant all the way down through history. Almost every generation has had to experience it, and no group of people seems to have found the solution for it. I mean, I had one young girl many years ago say the American Indians were living so peacefully here until the European came. Well, their graves showed that they were as much into warfare as anyone else, because so many of them met their death violently. They were not peaceful by any means, no more so or no less so than anyone else. Warfare just seems to be a big part of human history and human makeup. Now, history is a matter of writing. Have your primary sources. The primary source is where a person who lived at the time and saw the event wrote about it. Now, there are some obvious flaws with primary sources. For one thing, nobody knows at first what always happened. I mean, in a case, supposing some bomb were to go off, well, this person would see this and he would tell this story, and that person would see that and he would tell somewhat of a different story. But after we've had time to digest, well, just what did happen, then we can sort out the hype or the hysteria from the fact. Nevertheless, the primary source remained the persons on the scene living at the time wrote, and we use their records to construct history. But history is primarily written records, as opposed to other disciplines like archaeology. Archaeology is where we dig up artifacts. You go to a city where we know that the people once lived and dig up what's left, mostly pottery, things that did not perish or decay along the way, artifacts, their walls that they used to make the buildings with. That's archaeology. Anthropology, where we try to study the travels that these people had, how humans started at one place and spread out, studying language groups, and lately, more recently, studying DNA to try to determine how humans scattered, where they scattered. That's anthropology. They're related, but history is primarily writings. And we're going to be talking about a group of people who left us a lot and lots of writings, namely the Sumerians. And their writings have come down to us undisturbed. Why? Because they wrote on clay tablets. The clay tablets were fired apparently in ovens. That way they lasted. And then the libraries were abandoned and forgotten about. And 3,000 years later, archaeologists come in, dig them up, and find documents that were penned 3,000 years ago, sometimes longer than that. We know they have not been altered in any way, have not been changed, so we don't have a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. We actually have genuine, original sources, genuine, real primary sources. Now, with all due respect, I mean, the Bible itself is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. We don't have any originals anywhere, even though we know that a lot of the copiers were meticulous, and it was copied several different places. When we get them together, they all seem to say the same thing. Well, we have the Dead Sea Scrolls that go back 2,000 years, and they show that very little has changed from that time. But we don't have the originals. In the case of the Sumerian documents, which I'll be talking about shortly, we actually have apparently the originals. And they tell us a story that some of us find hard to believe, to say the least. Before I get to them, though, I want to back up just a little bit. Your authors take a viewpoint of history, the evolutionary viewpoint, that mankind descended from a different species. Again, all of you probably heard this from time to time. I will tell you up front, in my own way of thinking, this viewpoint of DNA has shown it to be virtually impossible. We have no way of knowing how genes can move from one chromosome to another, or how genes can move about. And if a gene did move from one chromosome to another, unless it met a member of the opposite sex that had the exact same movement of genes, the line would end right there. But the idea that genes can move from one chromosome to another, which chromosome numbers can change from 26 pairs to 24 pairs, or from 24 pairs to 23 pairs, folk, we have no way of knowing how this could ever happen. The creation of new genetic information has never been observed, either gradually or over a long period. Nevertheless, again, you can make up your mind for yourself. The authors take the viewpoint that man came about by means of a long, long road upward. And eventually appeared modern day Homo sapiens. Two earlier types of humankind were the Neanderthal man, sometimes pronounced Neanderthal, and the Cro-Magnon. Neanderthal is based on the fact that originally his bones were found in a place in Germany in the Neander Valley. The Cro-Magnon man is supposedly a more recent man. Now, something weird about both of these men, their average height was taller than the average height of modern man. Their average body build seems to have been larger than the body build of modern man, indicating that in both cases they were stronger than modern mankind. Weirdly enough, their brain capacities, again in both cases, their brain capacities were larger than the brain capacities of modern man, leading some to suggest that modern man may be degenerate. But back then they had better bodies and better brains, at least bigger brains than we have. We do know that in the case of Cro-Magnon man, he is so much like modern man that undoubtedly he could interbreed with modern Homo sapiens. Neanderthal man, now that's more controversial. There have been persons who say that no, he could not. Others who say definitely that he could. We have found cases of burial grounds where the Neanderthal man and modern humans are buried side by side in the same graves, indicating that the Neanderthal man and modern humans actually lived together side by side in the same village. This controversy is still ongoing, though, whether how much contact modern human Homo sapiens had with Neanderthals. There are some differences. There are persons who say that there's enough Neanderthal DNA in this world today If we decided we wanted to, we could combine enough of the right persons to recreate a Neanderthal man from modern day humans. If we did some more research and decided we wanted to. Again, this matter is wide open to debate still. The last word probably is not in. Your book does say, and I'm looking right here at page 3, right here in the middle of the page, all humans today, be they Europeans, Australian Aborigines, or Africans, belong to the same subspecies of human being. Having said that, folk, about 10 years ago, I subscribed to National Geographic study of my DNA, and I'm tempted to do it again because the price of it is coming way down, and I've been told by some relatives that the price you can get these kits at a drugstore. But several years ago, it cost a lot more. Anyway, this is a National Geographic study. And this shows the journeys that mankind took, supposedly starting out in Africa and spreading out from Africa all over the globe. The blue represents the male DNA, and the orange represents the mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA, that supposedly shows the female lines of spreading out. Now, in 1986, probably before most of you were born, persons studying DNA made a very startling discovery. They discovered that all human beings, particularly by studying the female in mitochondrial DNA, they came to the conclusion that all female human beings alive today are descended from one woman. This study helps to verify that. Then a short time later, by studying the male line, the Y chromosome DNA, they made a discovery that all men alive today are descended from one man. You will probably never guess what they called the original woman or what they called the original man. Those names come from a book that is forbidden in our public schools. They called the original woman Eve and the original man Adam. Folks, it's right here. National Geographic is as pro-evolution as they come. Nevertheless, the evidence is the evidence is the evidence. All human beings alive today are descended from one woman, one man. Now, there is one little bit of a problem. Men are closely related to each other, supposedly, than women are. Well, you might ask, how can that be? All of you have probably heard at one time in your life a story of a big catastrophe that occurred back yonder where everybody died except for one man, his sons, his wife, and their wives. That would explain, folk, why the male DNA is closely related to the female lines. Basically, you all know the story I'm talking about, I'm sure. The flood story is found all over the world. Every language group, every ethnic group, every ancient group that has records at all, and even ones that don't have a flood story. The flood story is not only written on clay tablets or on stone. The flood story is written in our genes, written in our DNA. According to your authors, they take the standard view that originally humans were at first merely gatherers, hunter-gatherers, persons who lived in tribes and went out and hunted, gathered food before they learned how to grow their own crops. I have some basic issue with that. For one thing, crop foods, folk, generally do not grow in the wild. They only grow when they're coaxed to grow. A weed will come up by itself and thrive without being tended to. foods that you eat, you have to make sure you plant them just the right depth in the ground, and then you have to take care that you hoe and weed and everything like that to get them to grow, at least up to a certain point. After a while you can quit hoeing and weeding. So how did these fruit crops grow before man came along to tend them? But same thing applies to a certain animal, particularly the sheep. You might not realize that sheep, if you walk around the corner of a barn and they didn't follow you, they'll never find you. They cannot even find water without being led. They cannot find pasture without being led to pasture. How did they ever survive without mankind? Also, yeah, they can't fight off their enemies either. They need mankind to fight off their enemies for them. How did they ever survive without man in the first place? Someone said, well, they descended from goats, that and certain types of goats can. That might be the case, and after a while, sheep became so codependent on man that they can't survive without him. Even though, the standard view, again, standard view is that that man eventually learned to farm for himself. The earliest age that we give credit for is the Paleolithic, Neo-Mesolithic, and finally Neolithic. Paleolithic, Old Stone Age; Mesolithic, Middle Stone Age; Neolithic, New Stone Age. Originally, supposedly, mankind dwelt in caves. And the American Indians, when the Westerners discovered them, they were in the New Stone Age. Believe me, I'm going to have a lot more to say about that later. And gradually then, mankind pulled himself up by his bootstraps until eventually he learned how to use metals, and they developed the Bronze Age, then the Iron Age, when he learned how to smelt iron. Iron is more difficult to melt. Bronze is a mixture of copper and brass. But he gradually pulled himself up by his own bootstraps. Now, I want to say this about cave people. Every generation of human beings has had people living in caves. And yes, we have people in this world who live in caves in the year 2015. And folk, we have some cave people I've heard who own cell phones, who own laptop computers, who own iPads. We have right here in Atlanta some bridge people who have MP3 players, radios, and color televisions. When you see a person living under a bridge and he's watching a small handheld TV, you can guess that he is living on the fringes of a much more advanced society of people who are much more advanced than he is. We have in Europe, in France in particular, a whole bunch of caves, and on the walls of these caves are cave paintings, high quality oil paints. Tells me these people were not necessarily primitive, they were simply living on the fringes of a society that was more advanced than they were. Yeah, we've always had cave people. Same way to me with these Stone Age people. When we say the American Indians were living in what roughly we might call the New Stone Age, I say yes and no. The American Indians we found in North America were in fact using stones, flint stones, for weapons and tools. But they were descended folk from a much more advanced group of people, and they were not on their way upward. They were degenerating on their way fast downhill, which is the case of mankind throughout most of history. Mankind started out very highly advanced and then went down. I'll be emphasizing that much more as the course progresses. Nevertheless, I must teach the standard, and I want to teach some alternate also. What are the other views? Well, why do I think that mankind degenerated? Well, right here in Egypt we have at least 100 pyramids, and it's doubtful that we, with our modern tools and machinery, could construct any one of them. And they were built not late. Okay, this morning I asked the question, were they built early in Egypt's history or late? Anybody know? The pyramids, were they built in the first part of Egypt's history, or did they come later?
Wasn't it throughout? Like,
It was not throughout. It was not. They were built in a small period in Egypt's history, relatively short period. If that's not enough, one of the Egyptian pharaohs built a canal that joined the Nile River to the Red Sea. But it's sanded over and silted up because winds blew, and later Egyptian pharaohs couldn't even keep it open. Part of the canal is still there, by the way, but it's all covered up. The point I'm trying to make is the farther back you go in Egyptian history, the more advanced they become, and the closer you come to modern times, the more they degenerate. The pyramids were built very, very early in Egypt's history. Why did they quit building them? They lost whatever the means, the technology, whatever they had to have had to build them, they lost. All right. And speaking of losing civilization, again, the American Indians, look around you, American Indians, you find highly advanced geometry needed to build mounds. And in Ohio, there's a 10-mile-long rattlesnake that we didn't even recognize as a rattlesnake. We got in the air and looked down on it from there. Hey, this is a very well-constructed rattlesnake. But the American Indians we found when the Europeans finally came in the 1500s were living in the New Stone Age. They were degenerate folk. They were declining, fast declining. They were not rising up to a higher level. They were losing the civilization they had. All right. And by the way, I was listening to a YouTube video just last night where somebody said that with the right kind of a weapon, our enemies, the United States, could put us back to the New Stone Age in a matter of a few seconds. I see a few heads nodding. If they could simply destroy our computers, our ability to simply destroy our solid state devices, we'd have no way to spend money, because most of our money we spend now is spent electronically. We'd have no way to pay our bills. We'd have no way to control or to get electricity to our homes. And we quickly go back. So in other words, can it happen? Yes, indeed. The more advanced you become, the bigger you get, the harder you fall. It can happen to us. All right. The book spends a few pages talking about the Neolithic, Mesolithic, Paleolithic. Eventually, mankind went from being herder to farmer, learned how to farm, and then he supposedly developed a civilization. Again, I think your authors somewhat have it backwards. He started out highly advanced, and some of the branches of humanity degenerated into herdsmen, tribal peoples. Your tribal peoples were degenerates from a more highly advanced group, and not the other way around. Now, all right. Civilization, again, supposedly civilization came as a result of necessity. All right. Now, to get to the Sumerians. Right here in this region of the world is a region we call the Fertile Crescent, because while this part of the world is mostly desert, this is mountains and very difficult land to work, but right in here is a very fertile land that supposedly is where civilization began. This area between the rivers is called Mesopotamia. The word Mesopotamia means land between the rivers. The rivers are the Tigris and the Euphrates. All right. Tigris River, Euphrates. The Tigris is to the east, Euphrates. These rivers join together before they empty into the Persian Gulf. Now, right right in here in this region, it's very difficult for some people to understand why was this region the place where mankind began its civilization, because nothing grows here except for clay and reeds. Nevertheless, you can grow crops. The clay they used, of course, they wrote on clay tablets. The clay they also used in making brick. And they artificially watered the soil. You know, they had rivers here. So the civilization would start along the banks of rivers. And this we're going to find true of whether it be Egypt, Babylon, Sumer, Indus Valley, the Chinese. These people tended to start their civilization along the banks of rivers, and it might be obvious why. Rivers mean water. Water usually means fertile land. And the ability to irrigate should irrigation become necessary. Or irrigation means you can artificially water a crop if the rain doesn't fall. So the civilization began here. The first civilization that we know of in this region is the Sumerians, or Sumer. Now, we do not know where the Sumerians came from. And on a very personal note, my very second paper that I did in graduate school dealt with just this topic about where the Sumerians came from. After 40 years of research, I believe I know, which I can't quite prove it to convince anyone. I think they came from this region over here, the Indus Valley. It's pretty eastward. I won't go into why because, again, it's speculative, and I can't prove what I suspect. But anyway, they settled down here in this region and built cities. Among the cities are Ur, Umma, Lagish, Kish, Uruk. And they set up civilization, what we certainly call a civilization. Just north of the Sumerians lay the Akkadians, or Akkad. Akkad was generally looked on as being the land to the north and Sumer to the south. Somewhat removed from Sumer, but nevertheless close enough to be a part of, was the city of Babylon, which has been important from time to time throughout the ancient world. Babylon had a tendency to rise, then fall, then rise again, then fall, then rise again, then fall. And in recent times it made news. Saddam Hussein was trying to rebuild the city. And he didn't get far because he just, every time he tried to rebuild it, he'd always run into some kind of economic issue that would prevent him from furthering the project. But supposedly he was trying to rebuild the city of Babylon. Now, the Sumerians were famous for the construction of ziggurats. A ziggurat is a tower, and some people believe that this might have led to the story of the Tower of Babel, which I'm going to elaborate on in a little bit. Ziggurat was a tower-like structure that generally got smaller and smaller the higher up they went. Sometimes, though, they twisted around and around to get to the top. At the top of the ziggurat, they might have a place where they would offer sacrifices to their god, or altars, or religious places. The Sumerians, as we're about to see, were a very, very extremely religious people. And in fact, it is believed by some that all of the world's great religions, or actually all of the world's religions, period, can trace their origins back to Sumer. The Sumerian gods found their way into Greek mythology. Enlil, the Sumerian god of storms, has been associated with the Greek god Zeus, with the Roman god Jupiter, and with the Norse god Thor. All these gods were gods of thunder, storms. His brother Enki has been associated with magic, associated with Loki, the Norse god Loki. Yes, the Sumerians had a sun god, Shamash, otherwise known as Utu, have been associated with Apollo, sun god also. Again, these people Some people believe that all the religions of mankind started out in Sumer and fanned out. The Sumerians also are known to have had a zodiac. The zodiac has always consisted of 12 symbols, and weirdly enough, the Mayans had a 12-symbol zodiac. So did the Chinese have a 12-symbol zodiac. These peoples of the world always seem to have had a 7-day-of-the-week cycle, with the 7th day being a day of rest. Again, can trace its origins back to Sumer. The Sumerians, up until the modern time, were the most inventive, creative people on earth. They're credited with inventing the wheel, with inventing mathematics, writing, taming the cow, the pig, the horse, the cat, the ox, the camel, and teaching the world how to grow grains, rye and wheat, barley, oats, some of the grasses. A lot of these had their origins right here in Sumer. So between religion, culture, politics, they're credited with having invented the office of the king. They would pick someone who is perhaps more wise than the rest of them and richer, and say, hey, there was a man who seemed to have the most charisma as far as being able to lead us in the battle against our enemies. Because we believe you can do it, we have trust in you. And they would anoint this man to be their king. Now, there is another side to them, though. When it comes to written records, they left behind written records in abundance. I mean, lots of them. We have more writing from the Sumerians than we have from Greece and Rome and Carthage all combined. And, as I've already mentioned, their writings are very, very original. When it comes to Plato, all we have from Plato is, the oldest document from Plato would have been written some 1,300 years after Plato actually lived. Aristotle, same way. Now, we do have some original manuscripts from some of the Greek artists or Greek mathematicians. We have one particular manuscript that was copied over by a later monk, but we were able to get with our scientific infrared reading and figure out what the original said. But for the most part, we don't have original sources, except for Sumer. All right, you might think we could really construct a history from Sumer. We don't. Here's why. Just yesterday evening, I put on your page on iCollege 3 stories, they're all in one document, that describe what the Sumerians actually believed. Modern scholarship simply does not believe what the Sumerians wrote. Why not? Among other things, the Sumerians believed that their gods maintained a physical presence on earth, not in the form of statues, but in the form of actual physical presence, and their gods would eat and drink among humans. The gods would live in temples, and not only were their people required to and to supply them with clothing and shelter, but occasionally, often, these gods would cohabit with mortal women and produce a race of hybrids, half human and half god. Folk, every ancient society believed that beings from another order of entities, call it what you will, maybe another dimension, another planet, came to Earth and once cohabited with human beings. I mean, all of you know, who was Hercules' father? Zeus. Yeah, standard story, except we don't believe this through history. However, if you study Greek history enough, you'll realize that a certain city-state in Greece, Messenia by name, the Messenians believed they were descended from Hercules. But look in detail about Hercules. He married, had a few children, then one day his wife and all of his children were obliterated. Well, he married again and had more children, and these children had more children. And their descendants moved to the city of Messenia, supposedly. In the case of Alexander the Great, he claimed he was descended from Hercules. Also, he also claimed his father was Zeus. I'll talk more about that later. Alexander the Great is the only general we know of, the only king we know of, who, when it was time for battle, he told his troops, "I'll lead, you come in behind me," and he was the first person to engage the enemy. Every time. Anyone else would have been killed. Alexander finally was wounded when he got to India. I'm going to save that for later. The Indians had weaponry that the other peoples did not have. Folks, I cannot actually prove that the gods lived among humans and even cohabited with earth women. But I can prove from the records that all the ancient peoples believed so. Now, I had a pupil at this point one time ask, what happened to the gods? Well, if those of you who have your book, which is probably none of you, I can tell, but if you turn to page 12, and if you have the same edition book I do, you'll find out what happened, some things that happened to gods. Page 12 talks about the destruction of one of the cities of Sumer, Ur. Ur is destroyed, I'm reading now. Bitter is its lament. The country's blood now fills its holes like hot bronze in a mold. Bodies dissolve like fat in the sun. Our temple is destroyed. The gods have abandoned us. Like migrating birds, again, they believed their gods could fly. The gods have flown off. Smoke lies on our city like a shroud. Now, this is August, folk. You might have, if you're paying attention to news at all, you know that in August was when 2 atomic bombs were dropped in Japanese cities 70 years ago this month. And a description of what happened to the cities of Nagasaki and Hiroshima fits very well what seems to be happening here. Bodies just vaporized. What was left behind was a bunch of mounds, small mounds of small blocks of salt. When they actually started to analyze the salt, they found this salt came from humans who were heated extremely hot. And most of the water in their bodies vaporized, and what was left behind was the salt. If this sounds gross, I'm sorry, but throughout the ancient world, we have quite a bit of evidence that nuclear warfare was used at times throughout history, particularly way, way far back in history. Now, last spring, I had the classes write a paper about that topic, and more than half the class simply refused. I don't believe it. The evidence is found in many places around the globe, including places where the sand in the desert has turned to glass. Sand does not turn to glass with ordinary heat. You cannot heat a fire, and the sand turns to glass. We'll talk more about when we come to India, and some people believe the city of Mohenjo-Daro, was destroyed in the nuclear holocaust. Right here, your book, this is a very famous line, by the way, a very famous poem. Your book mentions it. Has mentioned it for many years since we've been using this book. Now, about the city of Ur. I mean, okay, this is in the middle of a Jewish community. At least one or two of you should know this. What famous Jewish person came from the city of Ur? Anybody know? I'm sorry, nobody seems to. We know. Abraham. Abraham started out in Ur. And he went from Ur, eventually finding his way to Canaan. And while he was in Canaan, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah blew up. And possibly about the same time, while the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were blowing up over here in the nuclear holocaust, right over here in Ur, these cities were blowing up also in a similar, possibly the same type of warfare. Now, in this region right here, you visit and you will find the same thing you found in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, a bunch of salt blocks. At least their death came really, really suddenly, and most people there probably had no idea why. indicating something that highly resembles a nuclear explosion might have occurred here, 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 and over here we find some places in the desert, Sahara Desert, where the sand has melted in the glass. All right, now you might say, hey, I don't believe it. The atomic bomb was not invented until 1945. You can believe what you want to. Again, folk, the farther back you go in time, the more advanced they are. But it appears that their civilizations, such as they were, came to an abrupt end. And we're reminded the same thing could conceivably happen to us anytime someone gets the right type of a charge, electrical charge or atmosphere. And right now our sun is doing some really, really weird stuff. I know this being a ham radio operator. Radio communications over long distances using the short waves and HF region are almost non-existent these days. Why? Because the sun is not ionizing upper atmosphere. We talk about global warming. There are a few signs warning us we might be heading for an ice age, and rather quickly, as the sun cools down. We don't have an ice age. We have global warming. It's not an ice age. And one lady just recently told those persons who don't believe in global warming need to shut their mouths. Hey, that's not science, folk. Science is where everybody can speak. That's true science. But tell people who disagree to shut their mouth, hey, we got something to tell you about global warming. The hotter the world gets, the better it is for life. There was a time, and I researched it, during the Cretaceous period, when the whole Earth had a uniform tropical climate. Any of you heard of this? And life on Earth was abundant. This was the age of the dinosaurs. This was the age of 200, 300-foot trees. There were no deserts. Life on Earth was super abundant. The Black Death in Europe was caused by a cooling down of the climate. When Europe was hot as a firecracker, and it once was, life was abundant in Europe. They call it the High Middle Ages. Then the climate cooled down, and 1/3 of Europe's population died. The same thing similar happened in India and China. In the 1600s, we had what's called a little ice age, when the sun apparently cooled. We used to didn't think the sun would cool down. Little ice age. Millions of people in China and India and Europe died of starvation. You might think, hey, what we need is global warming. Well, we need global warming. What we might get is global warming with the resultant famines. All right, hey, if anyone wants to disagree, I'll open the floor. I won't argue it. I'll let you say your piece. Anybody? At least I seem to have most of your attention. It's kind of a sleepy afternoon. It looks like most of you are listening. If I've done that much, I've done my job. All right. Anybody? I mean, hey, I don't need to do all the talking. If you have anything to say, speak up. Yes.
Studies have shown that people can still survive during an ice age. They just have to be near points in the Earth, Yosemite Park, where it's hotter. They don't need to harness the actual heat from the Earth.
Yeah. During the 1300s, when the ice age hit, there were some Norwegians living in Greenland. And the Eskimos knew how to survive it. Well, when the ice hit, the Eskimos, hey, thought, this is great. This is how we lived all along anyway. The Norwegians living in Greenland would not consider asking for advice from Eskimos, so the Norwegians all died. The Eskimos thrived. They knew how to handle it. This is documented, folk. And then 200 years later, when the Europeans finally dared go back to Greenland, they found the last of the Europeans lying in their beds dead. And then when I got to digging up the graves, they found that the people that, a lot of the filling up the graves were the people they couldn't afford to lose, namely young women of childbearing age who were dying in droves. Again, the last ones often died in bed with no one to bury them. This was caused by global cooling. That carried away a third. Yeah, you can survive. We'll talk more about this later in the semester. And something else about when the Black Death hit Europe, two types of people survived it better than others. They were both hated: old maids and Jews. What do old maids have around their houses, folks? Anybody know? What? Blankets perhaps, but I was looking for some certain kind of cats. These fleas that caused the Black Death were spread by rats. What do cats do with rats? Yeah, keep them away, kill them, keep them in check. So the old maids had these cats around, not knowing the cats would keep them alive. And as for Jews, Moses commanded to be clean. Jews might have liked cats also, but Jews were, well, that made the Europeans hate both the old maids and Jews. They called the old maids witches, and they started running with the stake for witchcraft and killing people who were still alive. Anyway, this is a black part of Western history, but it did happen, yes. But yeah, you can survive a cooling, but you have to know how. And you can't plant the same crops that you've been planting. And this is where a lot of people start. They would plant the same crops that they planted years before, and if they'd have known, they could have, oh, so you've got to plant crops that grow in cold climates now. Again, big mistake that they didn't realize. All right. Now, before we close, I want to talk about well, actually, there's a whole lot more I can say about the Sumerians. So it wasn't just their religion. I mean, they were very religious. Their language. Their language was unrelated to any language we have on the face of the earth. Well, there are a lot of languages like that. Now, a couple semesters back, I had the students write a paper on languages, and hardly any of them realized this. They said that different languages form when you have people who speak the same language scatter, and after a while, these people start talking different from these people and gradually develop a different dialect. Okay, that much is true. But how do you explain hundreds of languages that have no other language that they're related to on the face of the globe? None. Among them Basque, among them Sumerian. There are many languages that we find where there's it's not unusual, it's just many languages. No language related to them, and these people are speaking a language. All right, something about the Sumerian language. Now, I know that I don't mean to insult anyone's intelligence. This is not a third grade class, but nevertheless, when you see this, how do you pronounce it? It doesn't look like pounds to me, but only a third grader would tell you that. After a while, you get to where you accept it. Okay, that's pronounced pounds. It comes from another language. It comes from a Latin word meaning libre, L-I-B-R-E, which is a Latin word for a certain amount of weight, a certain mass. The entire Sumerian language was written that way. Well, how come they wrote their entire, well, the question is, in what language did they write it from? Nobody knows. Even they didn't know. Folk, it almost looks like what we would expect to find if the Tower of Babel story were true. If one day they woke up, their writing would still have been the same, but they were not talking the same way they had the night before. This story, now by the way you're going to find it, it's not just a story in the Bible about the Tower of Babel. The Sumerians have mentioned it. If you look up the wars about Merkar, I do have a section in there about what the Sumerians said, that one day they all woke up and Enlil, their god of thunder, confounded their languages. Because he wanted to stop a certain project we're doing, and he also wanted to scatter over the face of the earth. They credited it to Enlil, but they speak about it, and I show you the exact URL where you can go and find it. There are other places where you can go and find it. In other words, these stories are not just confined to stories that were written. They were actually based on possibly actual historical events. The people woke up one day and weirdly they could not understand one another. You can believe what you want to believe. The Sumerians believed this way. The Sumerian language also was tonal. You speak a syllable in a low tone, it meant one thing, and the same thing in a higher tone, it would mean something else. It's not like saying the languages to each other. Their writing was not based on letters that were formed to words. Their writing was based on syllables, and the syllables they formed into ideas. It's called syllabic. It's called agglutinative. Again, I don't want to try to spend too much time explaining what the word agglutinative means, but it's basically a syllabic tongue. And if any of you are familiar, 100 or so years ago, some scholars tried to make a language that would be perfect language, and it's hopefully everyone to speak it. The language is called Esperanto. Any of you have ever heard of it? Okay, in Esperanto, all words were spelled the exact way they sound. All letters had the same pronunciation, and the letter C was not used because C can sound like an S or like a K, so they would pronounce it either S or K. The letter C was not used. It was a perfect, but it's a lot based on the Sumerian idea that you could put a bunch of syllables together and make a conglomeration or agglutination, and people would understand you. Not really a sentence as such, but Sumerian, again, these people, highly creative, highly inventive, started mankind off and seems to have abruptly disappeared and been completely, totally forgotten about until their memory was revived about 180 years ago, 190 years ago in the 1850s. About 150 years ago, their memory was revived, but they were completely, totally obliterated off the face of the earth and forgotten about. And the only known descendants of the Sumerians today are the Jews. And I say this in no way being demeaning to the Jews. My wife is part Jew. But Abraham was a Sumerian who came from Ur of the Chaldees. Again, if any of you know of the account of Abraham, he started out in the land of Sumer. All right, it is raining very heavily outside, and it is time to close. On Wednesday, again, bring your syllabus. I want to go over it. And I hope you will all buy a textbook or find some way to get one. I don't care how you get one, but you will need one. As you might can see, I do teach from the open textbook. The tests are based on the text. There are places where I disagree with the authors. Fine and dandy. Having said that, have a good couple of days, and I'll see you on Wednesday.